How did we get the pyramid upside down? How did we get to where we are, where we talk about everything except we talk about student achievement, but when we try to get to things that might change or improve student achievement, we run into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. How did we get there?
Well, there's no one thing that we can point to that is the reason why our school system is in the state that it is today, and likewise, there's no one silver bullet that's going to get us out. But the bottom line is that we, as a nation, are really in trouble. We rank 14th, 17th, and 25th internationally in reading, science, and math, respectively. And, you know, for me, the bottom line is that America should always be number one. And in order to get there moving forward, we really are going to have to start putting students first and stop prioritizing what is oftentimes the interest of adults.
Where do we start?
Well, at Students First, we really believe that there are three things that every state needs to focus on. First is making sure there's a high-quality teacher in front of the classroom every single day. The second is making sure that we empower parents and families with information and options so that no family ever feels like they're trapped in a failing school. And the last is utilizing taxpayer dollars wisely. Right now, we spend more dollars per kid than almost any other country, but we're not really getting a good return on investment.
Michelle Rhee is with us, former chancellor of the school system in Washington, D.C., and the founder of the New Teacher Project. She has a book out also called Radical, Fighting to Put Students First. In West Virginia, Michelle, we have this year, we don't have a big school system, but we have 600 classrooms that do not have teachers certified to teach that discipline in that classroom. We're arguing about how to change that, and when I talk to some leaders, they say we need to raise across the board salaries to the point where we can get teachers to come in, but we have budgetary issues like every other state. And I say, why can't we do some things like locality pay or specialized pay or pay for certain disciplines to try to fill those disciplines? What are your thoughts about that particular problem?
Well, you know, I think that for one, teaching is the hardest job that there is, and highly effective teachers that are out there really are the heroes of our country. And quite frankly, they should be recognized and rewarded for the work that they are doing. You know, I think across the board pay raises oftentimes don't make a lot of sense because you want to be able to incent the best people, the most highly effective teachers, to come into the classroom and to stay in the classroom. And so what we would recommend is that pay scales move from the very rigid step and lane structure that they have now to one where when a teacher is showing extraordinary gains in student achievement, really is successful, to your point, in hard to staff schools or in hard to staff subject areas, that those teachers are paid more. We put something like that in place in Washington, D.C. It was very significant, such that highly effective teachers in low-performing schools teaching in high-need subject areas could make almost twice as much money as they were in the old system. And what it did was it made sure that we were retaining our highly effective teachers at a much higher rate than the ineffective teachers.
Michelle, when I bring that up here, I'm told two things. One is that there's no proven system to be able to accurately measure performance and thus reward teachers appropriately for performance, number one. And number two, that you invite envy and animosity in a system when you start paying some people more than others.
Well, I think, you know, that the idea that you'd create a system with envy and animosity simply just because you're paying some people more than others is actually not true. Teachers are right now paid different amounts of money. They're just paid differentially based on things that don't make a lot of difference in the classroom, which is what degrees they have or their years of service. So I don't really buy into that. In terms of, you know, whether or not there is a teacher evaluation system that can give you accurate information about how effective teachers are, you know, there are a lot of people who say, well, there's no way to measure how good a teacher is, but actually there are. A recent study just a few weeks ago came out. It was supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and what it showed was that you can absolutely measure teacher effectiveness, and that states across the country should adopt teacher evaluation systems that count growth in student achievement levels as a major part of a teacher's evaluation, that they should also count observations of classroom practice, and those observations should be done by more than one person, and that they should also include parent and children student surveys, and that when you take a holistic look like that at a teacher's performance, that it actually is very consistent and very accurate.
Michelle Rhee is with us. Her book is Radical, Fighting to Put Students First, former chancellor of the Washington, D.C. school system. Michelle, I think that, and maybe I'm naive, I think in West Virginia we're just getting ready to take on education reform. We had a big audit, and there's been a response by the school board, state board, and the state board is reform-minded, and we're getting ready for the legislative session. And I've been telling my friends at the teacher organizations that they need to ride the wave, and those who want reform don't just go out and start bashing teachers and throw them under the bus because you're not going to get it done that way. I mean, how do you get it done and kind of get everybody moving in the same direction? Is that possible?
It is possible. And first of all, the reforms are not going to happen without teachers. We need great and effective teachers to be part of the reforms. We want these reforms to be done with them, not to them. So that's very important. But second, everyday people, everyday citizens, parents, grandparents, business owners, everywhere, they need to get involved. There is a tremendous amount that can happen at the state level, where people are putting pressure on state legislators to start to put laws and policies in place that are going to finally ensure that the interests of children are being the priority of the state lawmakers and legislatures, and that's of critical importance. So what we encourage people to do is just get involved. Go to our website at www.studentsfirst.org. Look at West Virginia's report card, which right now West Virginia ranks an F with us in terms of its policy environment. Understand what policies need to be put in place, and then really put pressure on your public officials to make sure that they're passing those kinds of laws.
Why did we get an F, by the way? Do you know?
West Virginia got an F because, quite frankly, the laws and policies that are in place really work against student achievement. So, for example, you don't have a rigorous teacher evaluation system in place. You have laws in place that when teachers are laid off, they're laid off by seniority alone instead of the quality of the teacher and how good they are with kids. The state doesn't allow for things like differential pay, what we were talking about. There aren't a lot of choices for families in West Virginia, and so many families are trapped in failing schools. Not a lot of information or empowerment is given to the parents. So those are some of the reasons why West Virginia is really behind the rest of the nation in terms of creating the kind of environment that will allow great teachers to flourish and for all kids to learn.
It's evident, too, that across the country the change is happening, isn't it? I mean, it's happening.
Oh, absolutely. There is really a sea change going on across the nation now. 38 different states across the country have adopted rigorous teacher evaluation systems that count a significant portion of the evaluation on student achievement growth. So there's a wave that is happening right now. West Virginia just is not a part of that yet. That doesn't mean, though, that the state can't quickly get there. If you have a dedicated and committed legislature, political officials who are willing to take this on, you can see some really quick change very, very rapidly.
The other thing, Michelle, is in West Virginia, there's so much of the authority is centralized, and so much of how we run the school system is actually in state law. There are things, if we want to change, you have to go to the legislature and pass a law. It's unbelievably cumbersome. One of the thoughts is if we could return more authority to local school boards who sit there with their hands tied, that they could be more innovative, they're closest to the parents, that we could have a better chance of making changes.
Well, to be quite frank, if you look at a lot of the states that have moved towards decentralization and have empowered the local school boards aren't any better at making these changes.
Oh, really?
There has to be a balance, though. What we really believe has to happen is the state has to adopt these laws and policies that put kids first. That's the bottom line. But each local school district and school has to have more flexibility around how they meet certain goals how they institute certain mandates, and how they develop, for example, the teacher evaluation models, but within certain guidelines that the state is setting forward.
Michelle Rhee, the book is Radical, Fighting to Put Students First. One final question. What do you think of year-round calendar, or balanced calendar, as we call it?
Well, when our kids are where they are in this country, which is behind the rest of the world, we have to make sure that we're utilizing every single resource at our disposal. And one of the resources that people really don't think of much or underestimate is the resource of time. Our kids have to be in school for longer school days and school years, and we've got to move away from this agrarian calendar.
All right, Michelle Rhee, Radical, Fighting to Put Students First. It's good to speak with you. Thanks for coming on today.